living here in this small town of Ajijic, Mexico for a few years now, and it reminds me a lot of what it might have been like in the time of Francis in Assisi. The people here are so open, just there's so much love, and yet Francis had to leave all of it behind to see if it was possible to take Jesus literally, to really do what he said. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing, Bill and I, as we travel across the U.S. In complete trust, in complete surrender. I remember when I was 18 and left home to join the Franciscan order in Chicago, I realized now that it wasn't so much that I wanted to be a Franciscan, I wanted to become Francis. I wanted to be St. Francis. And beginning this tour now, traveling across the country with Bill penniless and not even having any ideas how we're getting from place to place or where we're going to eat or sleep, that's the best way we can imitate Francis, who was the great imitator of Christ. We could have gotten a hotel or an apartment in New York, but I have this feeling like this is the moment. I'm trying to decide if I should bring the backpack, which is here, or the guitar case. Now, this is my Venezuelan cuatro. It's the only instrument I'm going to be bringing on the journey, and this fits nicely inside here with lots of other room. I'm wondering if I can put the other things that I need. For example, we have 2 pair of socks, 2 pair of underwear, only 2 brown shirts. We're traveling very light. The pants I'm wearing. Most importantly, what we have is the St. Francis habit. This is what I'll be wearing from the moment we begin the show in Portland, and then for the next 2 months. I don't think it's going to all fit. I don't think it's going to fit in either one, actually. I got an interesting email yesterday from an attorney who I'm working with to do something that's pretty radical. This lawyer is setting up a trust which I will have no control over, into which everything that I've ever owned will go into. And he wrote me an email, and he didn't get what this radical path was all about. He knew that I was wanting to imitate the great imitator, or to do something similar to what St. Francis did in imitating Christ, to take him literally, to give everything. And he said, I hope you realize that to keep you in poverty is going to cost about $80,000 a year. Well, that's interesting, Matt. $80,000 a year to keep me in this radical place of simplicity. That's when I realized how important this radical example is. We're starting off at St. Francis Wood by bringing dogs with us from Mexico to the U.S. So we have 4 of them. Here's one right here. She's a little bit scared. Here we go. I went for a walk this morning, wearing only my barefoot sandals and a thin pair of socks. As my toes began to numb, several things came into my mind. I'm okay with being stupidly unprepared, dangerously unsteady, and irresponsibly vulnerable. In fact, they feel like doors that lead to an undiscovered field where deeper mysteries are revealed. It feels important to stay connected to the suffering of the moment, rather than insisting on comfortable solutions that may slow my progress. I'm ready to feel the unsettled depths of what is, rather than forcing what isn't, or what never could be, especially if what truly is liberates me from my need to remain separate from true presence. The Camino we walk together is hard sometimes, but that doesn't mean there aren't gems to be found in the folds of my upturned trousers or new skin just inches away from blisters. They all have lessons to teach me. Beginning this journey as we are in just a day or so, I imagine how Francis might have felt at the very beginning of his journey, especially when he and Bernardo de Quintavalle went to a priest at the bishop's palace and asked him to open up the gospel 3 times. And the first line that the priest opened to said, "If you want to be perfect, go and sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, and then come and follow me." So I've decided that if I'm going to do this, I need to do it for real. I need to go all the way. So right now I'm signing paperwork on a trust. It's an irrevocable trust where all of my money, all of my properties, everything that I have will go into this trust to be used to continue this mission and to continue spreading this word.
That's just a cover letter there, I'm assuming.
So it's official. Everything is now put into a trust. Everything is out of my hands, trying to take literally what Christ asked Francis to do and what we're trying to do here in a very, very new way, a very exciting way. Here we go. So this is the big moment. I'm going to be sending all my cash, everything really, except for my driver's license. All my credit cards are going to be going ahead, so we can't have access to any of these things for the next 2 months. Bill is going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to be putting everything we have, just keeping my ID really, and mailing it to someone, so that we are living as close to St. Francis as possible.
So right now I'm feeling very naked, and I have $10, $9, and my driver's license, and that's going to last me for 2 months. I'm kind of nervous feeling.
Now that we've sent all of our money and credit cards away, and for the next 2 months, starting tomorrow, I'll be stepping into the character of St. Francis, staying in character for 2 months. A couple of the rules around that is I can't tell anyone I'm doing that. For example, I can't go around saying I am St. Francis. That wouldn't work, obviously. I have to be internal. I have to think as Francis would think. I have to act as Francis would act, according to what I know of Francis himself. There's a fire burning inside me, and I don't think I can control it any longer. The only thing that's keeping it from spreading are the concepts and beliefs I have about who I am. For the longest time, I convinced myself that I'm a man with a certain name, living in a certain body, but now I realize none of that is true. The fire I feel has nothing to do with my body, and nothing to do with the chains of identity I've wrapped around my true self. The time has finally come to let them all fall away, and in doing so, allow the fire room to breathe. If it burns down the whole world, I'll be glad for it. Jesus said, "I've come to set the world on fire, and how I wish it was already burning." I can relate to those words. What use do I have of a world that promises release but never delivers? Let it burn, and me with it. The only thing that would be left is the one I've always been. And the view from that mountaintop is spectacular. In a few moments, I'll be putting on the habit of this character that I'll be inhabiting for the next 2 months.
Well, you know, there's nothing as vulnerable as real strength, and there's nothing as strong as real vulnerability. So if you're living in a vulnerable way and taking nothing for the journey, that freedom you feel also brings with it deep strength. And when Francis heard those words from scriptures, it was right at the beginning of his conversion. He and his friend Bernard of Quintavalle went to the Church of St. Niccolo, and they wanted to hear the scriptures and what it is they were supposed to do. They didn't know. They just knew they were called to be something more than what they were. And they had the tradition of just opening the gospel 3 times and and following what it said. So the first thing they opened to was take nothing for the journey. And Francis immediately took everything away that he had. Even, I think in that particular version, it said not to even wear sandals, so he took his sandals off.
Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, bring your love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, bring your faith. And where there is despair, bring your hope.
We're beginning our journey now to Santa Barbara, getting to the train station. Going to begin this trek across the whole country, penniless, with no support, just trust and complete reliance upon grace, just as St. Francis would have done. It's a vulnerable position for us to be in, but there's also a sense of adventure and excitement to this whole journey that I think we're really embracing. What will happen, where we'll end up, God only knows. That's the only thing I know for sure. Okay, I'll let you know how we're doing.
Santa Barbara. Welcome to Santa Barbara. Wonderful to have you here. Oh my gosh, great to have you here.
So good to be here.
This is wonderful, wonderful
Yes.
blessing for this city, this community.
They have it right here.
We make our music here. So James, this is Old Mission Santa Barbara. We refer to this as the Queen of the Missions of the 21 California Missions. And this is where you'll be doing your performance here on Saturday night. And so it's the old historical center of the city of Santa Barbara, the county of Santa Barbara, and really the foundation of our province, the Franciscan province of St. Barbara.
So beautiful. This whole area has such history and such clarity. That's the word that keeps coming to me. And the vision of Francis feels so alive here. Do you feel that as well?
It is. It's really the bedrock in many ways of the Franciscan spirit here in California. And yeah, it's a place of great, great beauty and spirituality and history and culture here for the city of Santa Barbara, but even beyond our boundaries.
I've been struggling a lot since beginning this journey in Portland. I set out to live within the person of St. Francis and even thought the shift would be immediate and simple. Now I realize how powerful the gravitational pull of my own identity is. James is so much stronger than Francis, and I find myself being irresistibly pulled toward familiar patterns and ways of thinking. I find myself asking the question, who is talking here, every time I have a conversation? The lines I hoped would blur are asserting themselves and digging in. What will it be like a week from now, or a month? I'm not sure I even want to know. Better to feel the rub and let both identities flap in the wind. In the end, they're equally unreal. When Bill and I decided to begin this journey imitating St. Francis, we decided to do so without any money and to receive no money. And yet, here in Santa Barbara, people have literally been stuffing money into my pockets and putting money into my hands. One woman actually gave me a check for $2,000, which we're going to be using when we get to New York to feed the homeless before every show that we do there. And so we've decided to take the cash that people have been giving us here in Santa Barbara. We're going to go onto the streets and we're going to actually use that cash to share, to flow through us, to be a blessing to others, because that's what this journey is really all about. We just want to pass this on to people who need it more than us. Go out and get yourself
I am. I'm gonna go down to the thrift shop. No, I'm gonna go to the thrift shop first and get some pants.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Get some food and...
Hey, why don't you do that?
Okay. Sorry. How's your dog? Is he friendly? Thank you.
There you go, man.
Yeah. God bless. Eric.
Enjoy. Go get some food. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Wondering if you need a little bit of extra help.
Certainly will. Thank you so much.
I have 5 for you. So
Thank you. I like it.
the labyrinth of our lives winds in many different directions, always leading toward the center. At times, we find ourselves on the outer edge, and it feels as if we couldn't be further from the core of our true being. And at other times, it seems we are very near the center, but one quick turn brings us back to the outer edge. The journey we find ourselves walking moves in many different directions as we travel across the country. There are points of rest and points of activity, moments of great movement and moments of profound stillness. The only thing I know for sure is that we are walking a journey without real distance. For the truth is, we never left our home. If I can just keep my mind focused there, the twists and the turns quickly lose their meaning.
A Broadway-bound musical based on the life of St. Francis of Assisi drew a large audience at the Santa Barbara Mission tonight. Its star James Twyman and his friend Bill are just beginning a tour across the U.S. He says they're traveling the way St. Francis would have traveled 800 years ago. They're traveling with no money and no idea of how they're getting from place to place or where they're going to stay. They are trusting in the compassion of strangers, and they will be inviting the homeless into the theater in New York in February.
Our primary audience in New York are the homeless. Every day we'll be on the street passing out guest passes to people on the street, the homeless, and inviting them to come and be our guest. And then, of course, the people who are buying tickets, will be serving them. We'll have a soup kitchen. We'll be passing out things for them to keep warm in the winter. I think this is what Francis would have done, so we're trying to come as close to that as we can.
Father Larry welcomed them to the show at the Mission. The musical reminded followers that St. Francis valued inclusion and respect for all living beings. The actor hopes the play is a clarion call in a world divided.
Father Larry, I'm reflecting on the beautiful journey that we had here in Santa Barbara, all the different experiences we had, from feeding the homeless to passing our abundance on to them, being here with the friars, and of course the beautiful presentation of the musical here at the Old Mission. It's like Santa Barbara came to life for us, just as St. Francis is coming to life in this musical and in so many other ways. And I'm just wondering for you, how was that experience for you, seeing that story come to life?
I think it was seen as a personification of the life of Francis, and you truly exemplified that and brought that to us. And I mean, just your whole journey here, coming here, being penniless, walking in total trust and confidence in God, and just being an instrument of God's peace, truly have been an inspiration to everybody here, and everybody is deeply touched by this. The city has been, the community here, myself personally, our Franciscan community. So it's been an incredible gift, and we're just so grateful and appreciative. And we walk with you in your journey.
You certainly do. You are with us all the way to Broadway.
Yes.
I reached into my pocket today, expecting to find some money there before realizing there was none. Then I remembered the anxiety it caused the first several days after I put my wallet and all its money and credit cards into a package and mailed them to the East Coast to await our arrival there. The anxiety had been replaced by a feeling of wonder and even a sense of new freedom. In not having anything, I felt like I had everything, something I never sensed when my wallet was full. In giving it all away, I had a tangible experience of what St. Francis might have felt when he took off his clothes and walked out of Assisi naked. If nakedness is the price of this freedom, I'm willing to pay it. I'd rather release what I no longer need of my own free will than hold on to what never served my soul. We're here at the ABC studios in Phoenix, and we're going to be on the morning program, so I need to, almost like a superhero, transform into St. Francis. Our dear friend Glenn Scarpelli, who is one of our main contacts in Sedona, does the morning shows here on Fridays, and he was so generous to have me on the program. So we're going to start getting ready for that whole experience.
Then we'll have that set up, and then we come to the book.
Best-selling author, filmmaker, incredible performer, and has done these concerts in war-torn countries. We have some footage. Just remember to attach the chair so you're done. Don't.
Well, he gave up everything to lead a life of poverty, then led thousands of followers to do the same. One of his many missions was to preach purity and peace. I'm talking about St. Francis, who died in 1226. So what does this mean today? Well, it means St. Francis inspired our next guest to take his very own journey. And joining us again is the always inspiring Glenn Scarpelli of Sedona Now TV. And with him, a special guest this morning, New York Times bestselling author, songwriter, and performer, James Twyman. Welcome, James.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Oh, no, thank you for being here. This is so inspiring, just everything, James, that you have done. And Glenn, first of all, tell me, you guys have a relationship and a friendship that has lasted a long time.
Truly, you know, I've always been a fan of James Twyman, and then we became best buds. In fact, my partner Jerry calls him my non-gay lover, to be honest with you. So,
wow.
That's important. That's pretty inspiring.
Good morning. So I want to brag about my friend for a moment. You know, he's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a successful filmmaker. He's a singer, performer. But really, what really inspires me is he does concerts, peace concerts, in war-torn countries. And we have some footage here from a documentary that was made on Jimmy. This is in Syria, looking over a village in Syria that was taken over by ISIS. And he's there with religious leaders from all different types of religions, bringing the world together. And at these moments, there are actually meditations done, worldwide meditations done simultaneously with these concerts. So this man really is not only just a peace troubadour, is what he's known for, but he walks his talk.
Wow, and some of those images are pretty remarkable. We just saw the gunman, you know, standing by to protect you, and when you're trying to give the message of peace. James, you have been on this journey for a long time, my friend. I've learned more and more about you. And you just spent the last couple years writing a book called Giovanni and the Camino of St. Francis. Why did you decide to select St. Francis and then research and study and walk his walk and talk his talk to write this book?
I've always had a deep love of St. Francis of Assisi, and so many people associate him with the animals or St. Francis of the bird bath, but he's so much more complex. He was a character in the 13th century that led to the Renaissance. That's how impactful he was. And 800 years later, we're still talking about him. So when I wrote the book, Giovanni, I wanted to share something deeper, and I just began to think about a musical. What would happen if Francis came back and shared his story and sang songs about his life? And that's how the musical Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon was born.
Yeah, which is so interesting and fascinating that out of that would come a musical.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
And that's Jimmy Twyman, everyone.
Right. So you started to write this music really for the book, and it just turned into something much bigger?
It did, and now we're traveling across the country, penniless, trying to imitate Francis as best as we can on our way to New York, where it'll be an off-Broadway show for 2 weeks. And we're doing something that no other show has ever done, which is to invite the homeless to be our primary audience. So every day we'll be on the street passing out free tickets to the homeless, giving them socks and hats and gloves, feeding them, and the people who buy tickets are the ones who will be feeding them.
I love this.
That is beautiful.
True inspiration. And so you're going to give us a bit of a sample of what the musical is about. And what is the name of this song?
It's called Simple.
Oh.
And you wrote the song.
I did, yes.
I've yet to hear this myself, so I can't wait. I can't wait.
Appropriate.
All right.
Be like a child today. Don't overcomplicate what's simple. Yeah, so simple. I do believe that you can finally see what I have tried to get you to understand. It isn't hard to see what has always been true. If you take my hand, just take my hand. Be like a child today.
We're at the Mary Fisher Theater here in Sedona, and suddenly we have sound. Getting ready to do a big performance, sold-out performance here, and it's very exciting. I love Sedona. It's such a beautiful spiritual place, and to be able to share the message of St. Francis here in Sedona is a true gift.
I feel like I'm shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller, and though it's often uncomfortable, I yearn for it to continue. I look around at the hills and cliffs of Sedona and wonder what they can teach me about this. Compared to me, they seem eternal, looking down like I'm an ant or some strange insect. But my soul stretches toward the sky without stopping and moves through these spaces without effort. That's what I came to rediscover, creation itself reflected through everything I see. To feel the warmth of Brother Sun upon my skin and the compassion of Sister Moon reminding me that I'm never alone. Only then will the hills of Sedona lift me above my own littleness. Only then will I be able to truly see.
You know, I've worked with so many groups over the years, and for me, I have to say a litmus test of whether someone's understanding of the gospel is authentic, is that the best word? But is some kind of concern for the poor and justice. When I see our present politics, where it's so hiding behind power and money and war, the very group that calls itself Christian,
Yes.
and then hid behind slavery, the form of American Christianity that emerged and spread through the world from America is slaveholder religion. Slaveholder religion. Once you can justify having slaves, you are so far from Jesus. It's come on, and that they still can't see it. And sometimes those who use the word Jesus the most have justified a whole set of things that, and are worried about things that Jesus never talked about, Not once.
Guns.
yeah, guns. Abortion, which, I'm against abortion, but it is significant that Jesus never talked about it.
Or homosexuality.
Or homosexuality, not once. Our ability to let culture control the gospel is nonstop. Nonstop. When you put a religion against culture, culture always wins.
When I was, 29, I think is when I moved into the Catholic Worker in Chicago. It appealed to my Franciscan spirit, and because I was a Franciscan in Chicago at one point, and I remember Franciscans that I knew from then would come out to our Catholic Worker house, and I used to say they would drool over our poverty. Because they'd come into a Catholic Worker like this, and they would feel the essence of why they wanted to follow St. Francis in the first place.
Right.
Looking around, I just see typical Catholic Worker energy everywhere.
Yeah,
just
that's
the,
good.
the haphazard,
Right.
but some you can feel a vibration.
Yeah.
Something's happening.
Yeah,
There's
definitely.
something growing here.
Yes, literally.
Yeah. And the worms out there, they're growing.
The worms are growing. Yeah. The worms are thriving here. Yeah.
I feel like I'm connecting more and more with the Aboriginal message and life of St. Francis. Aboriginal means first. It takes us to the origin of who we are and have always been. Beyond the mind and the intellect, there is an original wisdom that has never left us, that's always whole and full. This is what St. Francis longed to capture when he left everything of this world and sought only the original message of Jesus. And what was that original message? It was a love that transcended reason, that connects and binds us all together. It sees past all the distinctions of the mind and leads us to an experience of union and communion. This is what all the ancient cultures embraced and promoted, if only we have ears to hear and eyes to see.
Taos, New Mexico. I've been wanting to come here for so long. I don't know if it's the culture, but I feel such a St. Francis energy here. And this is the Hanuman temple. And you were just telling me that Hanuman was the servant of God. Tell me more about that, because I feel like that is the energy of St. Francis.
Yes. Well, and there's, St. Francis, there's like this intimacy always about Francis. Francis and Clare, Francis and the earth. There's something about Hanuman that has that same quality. I think you're really onto something there. Because Hanuman is more than the servant of God, which sounds like this very formal, arcane kind of relationship, hierarchical relationship. But the way I've always experienced Hanuman, and I think I got this from Ram Dass, is that Hanuman is God's best friend.
Oh, you could say that about St. Francis as well, couldn't you?
Yes. It's like the beloved friend of the Holy One.
Wow.
And so Hanuman is also, the other thing that's so beautiful about Hanuman is he's got all of these magical, supernatural, wondrous powers. Like he can fly, and he can lift up a mountain to find a particular healing herb and carry it across the sky to deliver it to the person who's mortally wounded. So he has all of these incredible powers, but he doesn't know it.
I love seeing in these different traditions how the interplay of these energies manifest through different characters or different stories, but it's really the same story, isn't it?
It's those archetypal, mythic metaphors that are the way we connect with the Holy One. Talk about intimacy. To me, metaphor is where I gain that intimacy with the great mystery that transcends all description. But through these archetypes and metaphors, I'm able to have this heart connection with them. You know, Ram Dass called it the holy imagination. Like people would say, so you talk to your guru, right, in your head? And he said, yes, I do. Does your guru answer? Yes, he does. And the guy said to him, so isn't that just your imagination? And Ram Dass said, yes, it is. That's where I get to have my relationship with my beloved.
Just because it's the imagination doesn't mean it's less.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's more because it's not bound to time or space, it's eternal. I've been struggling with something that seems to have come together for me here in Taos, New Mexico. From the very beginning, my goal was to become Francis, to imitate Francis the whole time. So it was James trying to imitate St. Francis. And it wasn't working. And for the last number of days, even the last couple of weeks, I've been feeling this tension or inability and sadness even, because I set out to do this and have been unable to. And yet, something has shifted, and I realized I was going the wrong direction. It's not about James imitating Francis. Suddenly the shift has been the Christ imitating Francis. It's not a personality imitating another personality, but the Christ, which is the truth of who we all are, imitating St. Francis, who was imitating the Christ. It's almost impossible to describe. And being with Richard Rohr and knowing his amazing work around the universal Christ, it makes total sense now. And since I've had that shift, there it is. Suddenly I feel it. Suddenly it's no longer a personality imitating a personality, but that which is true within me, the Christ. And it's not even Jesus. I would like to say Jesus imitating Francis, but it's not even that. It's the Christ imitating the Christ, I guess you could say. It's beyond personality. I tell you what, it's made all the difference for me. In a few minutes, we're going to be leaving New Mexico after an amazing journey taking St. Francis through the desert, all the way from Phoenix here. We're heading on the train to Kansas City next, but wow, what an amazing journey. This morning, for example, our dear friend Robin took us to Santa Fe Sol, where she gave us an IV of vitamin C, acupuncture, what else? Tesla lights and things that I don't even understand, just to kind of boost our energy and keep us healthy. Now here we are in Lamy, New Mexico, where we met some incredible people at the train station and shared some music. St. Francis, I think, would be very happy with the experience that we had here in the desert. And now we're heading to the Midwest.
Last night I had a dream, stranger than I can say.
Leaving the desert is always like an initiation. For St. Francis, the desert was his former life, the life of the popular young man everyone looked up to. Suddenly he was homeless and ridiculed, walking out of Assisi naked and alone. But he was really stepping into his true life, the one he imagined in his dreams or when he heard Christ speak to him in the chapel of San Damiano. As for me, leaving Santa Fe and heading to Kansas City initiated a new phase in my journey. We were in the Midwest now, heading into both familiar and unfamiliar territory.
He put his hand upon the wood, and the stone began to lift.
On the way to Unity Village, where I would perform the musical later that night, we were greeted by temples and landmarks from a wide variety of spiritual and religious groups, including the Community of Christ Temple Tower, which rose high above Independence, Missouri. Unity Village lay quiet and still beneath a blanket of clouds, but the strong energy was palpable. The Unity movement was founded in 1889 by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore and has spread throughout the whole world. But the village outside Kansas City is ground zero. It was a suitable beginning to the third phase of our journey. The next stop was St. Louis, and as we caught sight of the famous arch, we could feel the energy building. The visit started with an interview at the biggest talk radio station in the city, KMOX.
Welcome to KMOX Profiles. I'm Debbie Monterey, and welcome to St. Louis, James Twyman.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Now, you have so many different things I could introduce you as. You are a New York Times best-selling author, but perhaps the thing that if I were you, I'd put on my business card would be Peace Troubadour, because I've never met someone who calls himself a Peace Troubadour. Can you explain?
It's unique. I've had the great privilege of being able to travel around the world to many countries at war or conflict, sharing a peace concert that I wrote, I guess, back in 1994, when in 1 hour I put the 12 peace prayers from the 12 major religions of the world to music.
Wow, that is fascinating. All right, well, you are in St. Louis, and you've come here from where? Because you are getting around the country these days, hitchhiking and relying on the kindness of strangers.
That's right. We haven't had to hitchhike yet because the kindness of strangers has been so great, but we are traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, penniless, with no credit cards, no money, nothing, relying totally on people's generosity.
Woe, divine master, grant that we may not seek to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love. We are now your instruments, beloved. For it is in giving.
He is who we should all be. I mean, he truly behaves in the way that I feel God meant us to behave.
Well, St. Francis to me is always I don't know a lot about St. Francis. He's what I hear James say is like the garden saint. He's the one with the birds on his, I always thought he was the animal saint, and I loved him because I love animals. But I really don't know a lot about him other than his drive for peace, which I love.
Who is St. Francis to you?
He's the patron saint of all the animals and the love in the world and things like that.
So St. Francis I fell in love with at a very young age, going to Catholic school. So, we read books about the saints and things like that. The saint of peace and compassion, and he's, so connected to the animal kingdom. Yeah, that's really all that I think. I just think of a very, soft saint who was able to rally interest, not by being loud or coercive, but just by being kind of who he was.
The next morning we were off for what would prove to be the most personally impactful stop on the tour, Holy Family Parish in Peoria, Illinois. When I was 12, my family moved to Peoria, where I attended Holy Family grade school and served as an altar boy at the church. Memories came flooding back as Father Paul Joseph, the pastor at Holy Family, took us on a tour.
A lot of people ask me how I first fell in love with St. Francis, and it happened mainly in this church because I was an altar boy, and I don't think we had a statue like this one of St. Francis, but for some reason that day during Mass, I had a holy card with St. Francis. And I think it was during the sermon, I was sitting there and I just took this out and I was looking at it. And as I looked at this card, something happened. One of those mystical experiences you can't really describe, but it was as if this glow began to take over, and the picture seemed to grow brighter, and I could feel something happening inside me, and this love and this devotion just overcame me, and I never forgot it. And I think I decided in that moment that I wanted to follow Francis in one way or another. Of course, right out of high school, I joined the Franciscan Order, but it was in this church. So when you called me and I get this message on my phone saying I'm from Holy Family Church, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. Good evening. It all started right there. Sitting in that chair as an altar boy at Holy Family Church in Peoria, Illinois. It's incredible to come back here, because from that moment on, a love affair with Francis and Claire began. I remember when you called me, I was lying on the ground, so lost my eyes could barely see, and my ears heard not a sound. Then in the quiet of that small chapel, I felt my heart rejoice. For then I saw you stand before me and heard the whisper of your voice.
I first joined the Franciscans in 1980, I was also walking every day here to Loyola University, where I was educated by the Jesuits. And so that energy between the Franciscans and the Jesuits, the heart and then the mind, it seemed to bring a balance within me that helped me to really understand the life of St. Francis even more. The past is collapsing all around me. What once seemed solid and sure now appears like flimsy movie sets without substance or reality. I visit the homes and bedrooms of my former life, and it feels like a different person lived there, not the fully shaped person I am now. It makes me question who I am, what I've become, and where I'm going. Will I look back years from now and have the same impression, asking the same questions of the one who is sitting in this place? The question, who am I, takes root in my consciousness and overwhelms all these concepts. The truth has nothing to do with my past or my future, but who I am in this moment. In this moment, I am free. In this moment, I am awake. It doesn't matter if the buildings and shapes have changed. Who I am right now is eternal and eternally grateful. It's always amazing to come back to the house of studies that I lived at 40 years ago. Do you believe that? Most of you weren't even born. Were any of you born 40 years ago? None of you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
We're both
Barely?
40, yeah.
Just barely.
I'm 42, yeah.
Okay. So you were a couple of years old when I lived here, and now you're postulants as I was. And I'm just curious. I know how I came and who Francis was to me, but I'm just curious. Let's begin with you. Who was Francis? Who is Francis to you, and how did he call you to become a Franciscan?
Well, for me, St. Francis was definitely an inspiration from him. Just the example of his really, every part of him and his message to me shows his radical love for God. And the biggest thing for me is for him and his story with him embracing the leper and reaching out to the outcasts and all that really drew me to, seek out a life to where I can give myself to serving the needy and serving the poor.
I first encountered Francis when I was preparing for confirmation. I didn't know who he was. I just remember having this prayer book and looking at the saints with the birds and the flowers and the animals. But on the side there was a prayer that said, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." Obviously, we most of us know that prayer now. But to me, he was a man of peace at that time when I was a younger kid. And throughout the ages, I've learned that he's a man of action. He's not just a person who's praying, but he comes to embrace the leopard. He comes to embrace the poor. He comes to embrace his own sinfulness. And that to me attracts me to him.
It's not that I don't expect to see someone as physically fit as you here, but obviously you lived a full life before you came to the Franciscans. So what drew you to this life?
It was like 5 years ago is when I got baptized, and when I went through RCIA, I also learned prayer. It's like, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." And I didn't really know who that prayer was by, but when I was getting baptized, I prayed that prayer during my baptism. And then not that long afterwards, I met a Franciscan, and I started learning more and more about the friars. And I don't know, I really fell in love with St. Francis, and man, really giving his all to the service of the poor and being a saint. And I just want to be the best disciple of my Lord Jesus Christ that I can be. And for me, I think it's to be a friar.
So I'm curious, you only were baptized 5 years ago, and here you are now living this radically different life. You must have really felt transformed by that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I learned finished up college, and then went on a couple of come and see retreats, which I'm sure you did as well. Yep. So I got to learn all about the friars during then. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. And man, so happy to be here and be with the friars and yeah, learn more about Francis. Yeah.
We're getting ready to leave Chicago and just got picked up by our friend Gary, who actually will be driving us the rest of the journey. It was a decision we had to make, and it was offered, and we have gratefully accepted. And before we leave Chicago, we're going to be going on a little bit of a personal visit for me to Evanston, where something happened that will always be a healing place for me, and I always like to stop in and pay my respects. So this is the apartment where Linda, my former wife, in 2005 was murdered. My daughter, Angela, and I, we were in Minneapolis at the time, and in the morning we heard the news of what had happened, that two men who are still unidentified somehow entered the apartment and, without taking anything, ended her life, and thus began the most difficult and strange journey that we have had to move through. And I try and just stop by here now and then when I'm in the city, just to feel and to honor her. Coming back here to this apartment, remembering all the times we shared here, our daughter growing up, and of course the tragedy that took place. I know that I speak for everyone who misses Linda, that it's the love that we remember the most and all of those happy times. And yet to be able to come back here and to just remember her and to honor her, and in spite of the tragedy, to know that it's love that carries on, and it's the love that she shared that we'll never forget. We're here at the Robert J. Delonis Center in Ann Arbor, and just enjoying being present with the people that Francis was always so concerned about serving and wanting to be one with. And for us to be able to come and share a meal and then a little bit of music here in downtown Ann Arbor as we travel across the country is another gift for us, just as much as it is for them.
'Cause you're everything to me. You are everything that I see. You are every breath that I'll ever breathe. Everything to me, everything to me, everything. Every breath
of an instrument of peace, I think of a flute. I don't know why, probably the peaceful flute music. And I think about that idea of God's breath moving through me. And so if I were to be an instrument of peace, it would be that idea, to allow God's breath to move through me as that love and that peace and that wisdom that I know God to be.
The first thing for me is to find that peace deep within yourself and work at maintaining it. Not an easy task, but it is doable. The older I get, the longer I practice, the more peaceful I become. And then when you feel that peace, I don't think you can help but share it with the world. It just happens.
I would say it's how you live your life every day. I would say as an instrument of peace, you should live by example and do the things that bring peace to the world. What are those things? So you're kind to your neighbor, you say hello to somebody at the checkout, you open the door for somebody. Those are the small things. There's bigger things, helping out people where you can help them out.
All I ask now is for a sign, if possible, a choice, a choice. For you are the choice I'll make every time. I'll make every time. And if the others choose to forsake, I'll remind. I'll choose to remind the poor and the lonely. They're all pushed to the side, but they're so dear to you now. And now a door has been opened, and I want to go inside. All I ask is that you show me how.
St. Francis is on his way to Broadway, and as we travel to do this one-man musical in New York, we wanted to stop in cities like Cleveland just to bring the spirit of St. Francis of Assisi by sharing the abundance that has been offered to us. We often pass out money or food and other things. So even though we are traveling penniless, it's completely abundant. And it just gives us more to share, especially with the homeless. People literally stuff 10s and 20s into our pockets so that we can pass out on the street like we are here in Cleveland. And it's just been an amazing adventure to really live this, not just talk about it. So we've entered into New York State now. We're getting closer and closer to New York City for our final run. And this is the town of Auburn, which is famous for Harriet Tubman. It's famous for the Underground Railroad and so many other things. It's a charming small town. And we're going to be performing the musical at a small theater here. I hear it's a sold-out show, which I'm always excited about. And it's just great to feel that we're getting closer and closer to our final destination of performing this for the homeless in New York. The gift of peace is not a small gift, as we know, but it's a gift that we've been keeping from ourselves by remaining isolated and separate. But the good news is that we're beginning to see the folly of our ways and coming back together. Many traditions, all of us individually, even nations. We were talking before about the power of coming together. I have personally found that when people come together and focus their prayers of peace in one direction, that it's not only a powerful force, but I believe it to be the most powerful force in the whole universe. We have really enjoyed the hospitality of these beautiful Franciscan sisters. And one of the challenges is that there are so few new vocations, young people who are coming into these orders. So many of them are retired or in nursing homes like this one. And we're going to go into this nursing home now, and we're going to share a little bit of Franciscan music and spirit with the sisters who are here. Make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, bring your love.
Go and rebuild my church. Those are the first words I heard him speak, but I was so young and naive, I thought he literally meant the chapel I was standing in, not the whole church. You see, it was a very dramatic time in Europe. The whole continent was moving in the wrong direction, and people were losing their faith everywhere you looked. Not much different than today, actually.
So we are in Hartford, Connecticut now, beginning the final stretch toward getting to New York to do the last 2 weeks of the Brother, Sun, Sister Moon run. And as we get closer, the uncertainty seems to be building. Having no idea how many people we're going to attract to the show, whether it be ticket holders or homeless, it is just an amazing experiment in trust, as this whole journey has been. Bill and I traveling across the country, penniless, completely relying upon the trust of others to get us from city to city. It's gone well so far, so I think all I can do is just maintain this rhythm and work through any doubt I have and just get to New York and see what happens. I bought a cup of coffee when I arrived in New York. It was the first time I spent money on myself in nearly 2 months since leaving Portland to begin the tour. It felt strange at first, but within seconds, it all came back to me. Spending money mindlessly without hesitation. I sat in the window and watched homeless people walk by without the luxury of choice. They can't turn on poverty like a switch on the wall and then turn it off whenever they want. For them, the climb is a mountain, while for me, it's only an anthill. Minutes later, I was back at the Catholic Worker, our host during the New York performances. For over 65 years, the community has been housing, feeding, and nurturing the real poor, the ones St. Francis would have encountered and loved. It brought an uncomfortable new focus to the last 2 months, all the miles we traveled to arrive at Mary House. Every performance and person we met along the way reflected in the eyes of the people who live here. It reminds me of the 2 years I lived at St. Catherine's Catholic Worker in Chicago, nearly 30 years ago.
I lived closer to true poverty then, so much closer than now. Peace seemed to drip from the furniture at St. Catherine's, much like it does now at Mary House. I just hope I can offer more than a few free tickets to an off-Broadway musical. The least I can do is bring the true spirit of St. Francis to life while I'm here. Maybe then the boundaries and the walls will dissolve and we'll see each other through a different lens, one that isn't quite as cloudy as the one I've been looking through. We've got these gloves for you, and from the donations of hundreds of people who have been helping to support this project. We just wanted you, even before the show, to have something to help keep you warm.
Thank you.
And then come inside, and we're gonna feed you.
Yeah, I love you.
Love you too, man. I'm gonna give you one more ticket here, so you can.
I got it right in here.
You got a ticket? Okay, well, give that one away. Give that one away to a friend, okay?
Yes, please.
Hi.
Hello, brother. How you doing? I'm good.
Thank you very much. God bless. I love you. I love you. Show him. Thank you.
Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Sing that with me. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. One more time.
It would be tempting to believe that the experience here in New York didn't go as well as I hoped. And though that seems to be true, I think the biggest lesson for me is to realize that there's nothing in this world that I really want, at least in terms of expecting things to turn out one way or another. The truth is, as Bill and I have traveled all the way across the country, beginning in Mexico, going to Portland, Santa Barbara, Phoenix, Sedona, and every other city in between, all the amazing people that we met, the events where we had so much inspiration, the homeless people that we served on the streets, in soup kitchens, we can't discount any of that. The whole journey led us here to this moment. And yes, it's true, we maybe didn't get to see as many homeless people here in New York as we had hoped because of the weather and the PR or whatever it may be, but everything went exactly as it should have. And it reminds me that beyond this world, there is a world that I really want and that's happening right now. It's happening through each and every single one of us. That's what I learned on this tour, and that's really what helps me to truly become St. Francis.